In Rome, a slave was valued at 2,000 sestertii, but victory in the arena brought his master 50,000, and some gladiators served patrons who were richer than senators themselves. Free men even sold themselves into slavery to fight in the blood-soaked sand, which raises the question, was this insanity, or was it history's most brutal and calculated career move? Gladiators lived Rome's deadliest profession from the 1st to 3rd century, where mornings meant brutal training under masters called lanistas and gladiator schools, and afternoons brought wound cleaning and weapon repairs. Some days they entered the arena, fighting to death before tens of thousands of screaming spectators, while the rest of their existence was an endless cycle of waiting, eating, sleeping, and training again. Most gladiators were prisoners or criminals who were forced into this brutal life against their will, but some ambitious men bought their freedom and stepped willingly into the arena for a chance at fortune. A single major victory was worth more than 5 years of an average family's income, and apparently that fortune was worth dying for in the eyes of desperate men. Gladiators received no direct wages whatsoever because they were property belonging entirely to their owner, and an average ludus master invested about 2,000 sestertii per gladiator initially. One victory brought the owner anywhere from 5 to 15,000 sestertii from event organizers, and in grand Colosseum spectacles, rewards could reach 50,000 sestertii per fight. The owner kept most profits, but gave small donations to his fighters, and a successful gladiator who fought 3 to 5 times yearly earned his master an impressive sum of 15 to 25,000 sestertii per year. For comparison, Roman soldiers earned only 900 sestertii annually back then, while a craftsman made roughly 1,200 sestertii per year in that era. So one gladiator generated 15 times more value than a common soldier, which is exactly why this business was so profitable despite all the bloodshed and death. Some free citizens became gladiators by selling themselves into contracted servitude willingly, and these volunteers, called auctorati, signed binding contracts in exchange for fighting rights. Their share from one victory could exceed a worker's entire annual income, and some even took 10,000 sestertii up front to clear debts and start businesses after their service. The risk was astronomically high, but the potential reward was staggering beyond belief, as they mortgaged their very freedom to fight for fortune in the sand. Freedom for gold, life for wealth, it was a calculated gamble with death itself, and many men took that gamble willingly. But here's the truly shocking part that nobody talks about much today. Gladiators were the secret lovers and obsessions of Rome's wealthiest women constantly. Archaeological graffiti, discovered on Pompeii's walls, reads clearly, Crescens, heart thief of the nets, man of 30 women, revealing the sexual obsession surrounding these fighters. Wealthy Roman women sent gladiators lavish gifts, expensive jewelry, and even made dangerous nighttime visits secretly to the gladiator barracks, risking their reputations completely. This was considered deeply immoral, but couldn't be prevented by anyone in authority, and gladiators were seen as society's sexiest and most dangerous icons of masculinity. Some women even used cosmetics made from gladiators' sweat that was collected after fights, which is disgusting to us now, but absolutely true according to historical records. Gladiators were mockingly called hordearii, which means barley eaters in Latin precisely, because their diet consisted almost entirely of barley and beans every single day. While wealthy Romans feasted on meat, fish, and wine, gladiators were strengthened with strict vegetarian diets, as barley strengthened their bones and protected them from devastating blows in combat. This was the ancient world's version of performance-enhancing supplements and steroids, essentially, and their deliberately fatty bodies ensured that when wounded, bleeding would slow significantly. These men were intentionally kept overweight for medical survival reasons in battle, so that blood would spill dramatically in the arena, but not enough to kill them immediately. Their social status in Roman society was remarkably complex and deeply contradictory, creating a paradox that defined their entire existence in that world. They were socially scorned outcasts, legally categorized with slaves and criminals always, but simultaneously they were celebrated cult figures that crowds absolutely adored passionately. People admired them greatly and recognized them on streets like modern celebrities today, yet marrying a gladiator was considered utterly shameful for any respectable Roman citizen. Some emperors even tried entering the arena themselves and immediately lost all respectability, and Emperor Commodus himself fought in the arena multiple times for public entertainment. The Roman people didn't respect him for it and thought he was insane, proving that even imperial power couldn't overcome the arena's social stigma completely and permanently. Now comes the darkest truth that archaeology has proven, without any doubt. Skeletons found in gladiator graves reveal this horrifying fact clearly and unmistakably. The average gladiator died at just 22 years old in his prime, and most perished within their first 5 to 10 fights in the arena. Some died in their very first fight, never seeing a second sunrise, and very few gladiators ever lived long enough to see their 30th birthday. The survival rate was absolutely horrific by any measure imaginable today, and even if you won victories repeatedly, wounds accumulated relentlessly while infections spread rapidly. Medical care was extremely limited and primitive compared to modern standards entirely, so surviving the arena for years was nothing short of a genuine miracle. Death was the most common outcome, always lurking in every fight ahead, waiting to claim even the most skilled and experienced warriors. Some rare gladiators gained their freedom and became eternal legends remembered forever, and the wooden sword called Rudy's was the ultimate symbol of freedom granted. If you won enough times impressively, spectators and organizers could grant your manumission, and a legendary gladiator named Flamma received 4 separate Rudy's offers of freedom. But he rejected every single one of them, choosing to fight again and again, which raises the question, why would anyone do that? Because he calculated that staying in the arena was simply more profitable financially than leaving, and he eventually retired with 34 victories and died a celebrated legend. He consciously rejected freedom and deliberately chose fame and fortune over safety instead, proving that the arena's allure was more than just survival. But the harsh reality was far more bitter than any legend suggests, as you'd spend 90% of your entire life locked in cramped, dark cells. You'd wake every single day with the genuine fear of imminent death, and your wounds would never fully heal before the next scheduled fight arrived. Disability at a tragically young age, festering infection, or outright sudden death were the only outcomes most gladiators could expect. You couldn't see your family, couldn't maintain a normal relationship or lover, and the sole hope keeping you alive wasn't money, it was eventual freedom. And most gladiators never lived to see that glorious day of liberation, dying instead in the blood-soaked sand before indifferent crowds. You could potentially get rich from one major victory in front of roaring crowds, but you'd probably die violently in your first 3 fights in the arena. Was it a risky gamble? Terrifyingly so, beyond what we can even imagine today. Was it worth the sacrifice? For most fighters, absolutely not in hindsight, but for those with no alternatives in life, it was their only way out. The only path to wealth, fame, and possibly freedom before death came to claim them in the sand. The gladiator represented Rome's most tragic and profound paradox of human existence, a savage, bloody path from slavery to potential wealth, from shame to fame. Most died forgotten in the sand, bleeding out before cheering crowds who would forget their names by sunset, but some managed to save their families with a single spectacular fight. Freedom was purchased with rivers of blood and mountains of gold coins, and one sword strike would either destroy you completely or make you eternal history. There was no middle ground, no safe path, only glory or death, and that was the terrible choice every gladiator faced. As we trace these lives long lost to the dust of time, continue this journey by subscribing to our channel and exploring history's darkest professions.